some pretty big news when it comes to the Bank of Canada. For the first time since last March, the Bank of Canada is expected to announce today, or that it has announced that it's holding the line on its trend-setting interest rate. So finally, some good news for people who have variable mortgages and loans. Clinton Wilkins, our mortgage guru.
I think it's great news, Todd. I think it's certainly going to build some more consumer confidence. And I think it just speaks to the work that they've done the last 12 months is now starting to pay off. As you know, inflation numbers in January were showing a downward trend. And I think now what we need to do is wait and see these increases and what's going to happen with inflation in the next several months.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess if inflation continues to ease off, and that's what we're all hoping happens, then these interest rates will remain stable. I don't think we could look for a cut anytime soon, though. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the rates are going to be high all year, Todd.
Yeah.
I think the next announcement, it's on April 12th. I expect there's going to be another hold. Mm-hmm. Inflation is still high in terms of housing costs and food costs. So those are two things that the Bank of Canada is really trying to obviously soften. And, where the rates are, we may see another bump depending on what's happening with inflation. Likely, I think we've kind of leveled things off now, which I think is good news for consumers. We still know the rates are high, but at least you can plan. You can make some decisions. And that's going to have an impact here, I think, in our real estate market as well in Halifax. The spring market is typically the busiest market of the year, mm-hmm. and there certainly were some concerns, obviously, this year with the rates being high, how that's going to have an impact. But I think there's going to be more confidence now, knowing that things at least have balanced out a little bit.
All right, so what about what happens in the United States? Because this is obviously something that they're dealing with in the U.S. as well as decisions when it comes to the interest rate. Does that have any effect on decision makers here in this country, do you think?
I think it definitely does have an impact. Yeah. They look and see what the trends are, and what happens in the U.S., trickles down to what happens here in Canada, or trickles up, I should say, really. And historically, what happens in the U.S., they need to have double the amount of increases to have the same amount of economic impact that an increase would happen here in Canada. So typically, when we see the Fed increase, the Bank of Canada will typically increase about half of how much the Fed would. We've had some good success in bringing the inflation in line. I think their inflation was maybe even more challenging than it was here in Canada. So they definitely need to go with a more aggressive, increase schedule to, bring inflation back to where it needs to be.
All right, to summarize, no interest rate increase this time. You feel as though that we could look for that next time, although to summarize, you feel rates will stay high for about a year or so around where they're at before you make them come back.
You know what? I think they're going to be high all year, Todd.
Yeah.
And really the mandate from the Bank of Canada is to protect the Canadian economy and to bring inflation back in line. There's certainly some work to do here, and I feel like we're going to have some pain. The challenge is that as we slow the economy with these rates being high, there will be a recession on the horizon. Mm-hmm. There's already some indications that there's cracks in the economy, that things are starting to slow. It's good news in terms of what's happening in the rate environment, but maybe not great news for everyone in terms of what's going on in the rest of the market in terms of, jobs. We're going to be keeping a very close eye on that. And obviously, we're going to be waiting for the job numbers to come out. They were very high at the beginning of the year. I'm personally not convinced that there were a lot of new jobs added, Todd. I think there was a lot of lateral moves. And I think that'll certainly come to fruition. And we're going to keep on keeping an eye on things going forward.
Great stuff, Clinton. Always appreciate your insight, pal. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, you got it. Clinton Wilkins, our mortgage guru.